Apocalyptic Super Farm. Chapter 21-30. Chapter 21. I prepared too. Just after Hiroshi uttered that sentence, Yuna suddenly felt a cold breeze brush against the back of her neck. As a professional bodyguard, Yuna had done plenty of dirty work for Jack over the years, honing a keen sense for danger. In that moment, she instinctively took a step back. Her instincts proved correct. Hiroshi suddenly sprang into action, his body like a powerful leopard bursting with energy, lunging towards a burly man standing to his left. Smack! Hiroshi leaped nearly 2 meters into the air, his right hand gripping the burly man's head, while his knee shot up, slamming directly into the man's throat. Crack! A gut-wrenching sound of bones breaking echoed as the man's eyes widened in shock. His Adam's apple caved in abruptly, and he staggered backwards, collapsing lifelessly. The entire sequence took less than 2 seconds. Yuna was stunned. Her mind went blank. She never imagined that Hiroshi possessed such terrifying skills. In fact, she had already taken Hiroshi very seriously. On the night Momo and Alex attacked the farm, it wasn't just Alex's gang on the scene. That evening, after Angus found Jack immediately dispatched Yuna to find Hiroshi and retrieve the medicine. Yuna's plan was to assault the farm at night and forcibly subdue Hiroshi. However, when Yuna and her men arrived outside the farm that night, they discovered another group preparing to attack the farm before them. So, Yuna decided to hide in the shadows, intending to catch both groups off guard and claim victory for herself. To Yuna's surprise, Alex and his men were swiftly and thoroughly dealt with. There wasn't even a trace left of them. Cold sweat trickled down Yuna's back as she hid in a roadside ditch, feeling a sense of relief. If it hadn't been for Alex's group, they might have met their end that night. The farm's firepower was overwhelming. A frontal assault was out of the question. Due to the darkness and chaos of that night, combined with their cautious distance, Yuna and her team didn't realize Alex's men were taken down by a steel hunting dog. Yuna assumed the farm was equipped with high-powered flamethrowers. Seeing the carnage, Yuna believed a direct assault would lead to their annihilation, prompting her plan to lure Hiroshi out using Angus. Hiroshi wouldn't be armed to the teeth when stepping out, right? Up until 3 minutes ago, Yuna's plan was proceeding smoothly, aside from Angus's sudden betrayal. But now, Yuna realized her mistake, a colossal mistake. Hiroshi's skill in taking down a man instantly rivaled the world's top assassins. It wasn't until the burly man fell with a heavy thud that Yuna snapped out of her daze. Attack together. Cripple his limbs. Keep him alive. Yuna shouted, drawing a sharp dagger from the sheath at her waist. The remaining 6 men rushed at Hiroshi, ready to overwhelm him. Hiroshi marveled at his newfound strength. Over the past few days, he'd only seen a 10% increase in his stats but hadn't tested it. Now, he understood the terrifying effect of the enhanced physique attribute from the radiation-resistant crops. It wasn't just an increase in strength and speed. It also boosted bone density, blood vessel thickness, and even nerve response time. For instance, a normal adult male's maximum punch force is around 150 kilograms. If forcibly increased to 300 kilograms, the punch might harm the enemy, but the man's bones would likely collapse under the strain. A cat enlarged 100 times wouldn't become a tiger because its bone density couldn't support its massive body. Its muscles would crush its skeleton, and its blood vessels would burst. These were 2 completely different species. At this moment, Hiroshi wasn't just surpassing ordinary human strength. He had transcended human limits. If there were a term to describe Hiroshi, it would be a demigod. Although he hadn't yet displayed power worthy of that name, continuous consumption of high-grade food would eventually turn him into a humanoid dragon, matching gods with a mortal body. People once sought enlightenment through swords or fists. I guess I'm doing it through food, Hiroshi sneered, eyeing the 7 men rushing towards him. Despite his enhanced physique, he wasn't foolish enough to confront sharp blades barehanded. Smack! Hiroshi reached into his coat, pulling out an object and pointing it forward. It was a small revolver. The dark barrel glinted coldly, exuding a faint metallic scent. Yuna and her men halted abruptly, staring wide-eyed at the revolver in Hiroshi's hand. Unlike makeshift shotguns, This revolver boasted superior accuracy and stability. Obtaining one was exceedingly difficult. Even the wealthy Stardust Group had only acquired one through Jack's considerable efforts, mainly for his collection. Yuna's team primarily used weapons like batons and knives, never something as advanced as this. Facing the black muzzle, Yuna's panic was palpable. Come on, weren't you going to cripple my limbs? Hiroshi's lips curled into a calm smile. Why are you hesitating now? Sweat beaded on Yuna's forehead. After a brief silence, she chuckled. A single revolver, with at most 6 bullets. There are 7 of us. Can you kill us all? Oh. Hiroshi feigned realization. We fought well. I advise you. Yuna began. That's why I prepared too. Hiroshi interrupted, pulling out an identical revolver with his left hand. Yuna was dumbfounded. Hiroshi wasn't a fool. In such a perilous environment, he'd never be unprepared. Both revolvers were obtained from the system's exchange, kept hidden for moments like this. Hiroshi agreed to go out with Angus partly because of Angus's convincing act, but mainly because he was confident. Even if Angus betrayed him, he could escape unscathed. I advise you to think carefully before acting. Stardust Company isn't something you can provoke. Do you know who sent me? Yuna's face darkened, her heart racing, but she maintained her composure, trying to intimidate Hiroshi with Stardust's name. F*** you. Hiroshi laughed angrily. I don't care who sent you. I just want you to know who's going to end you. Chapter 22. Please forgive me. Just as Hiroshi finished speaking, Yuna executed a quick roll, dodging Hiroshi's aim and inadvertently crashing into 2 of her companions. Bang! Bang! 2 dull gunshots echoed, and the 2 burly men fell to the ground, bullets lodged in their thighs. At that moment, one of them, weighing his options, turned and sprinted towards their vehicle. Hiroshi squinted, knowing he couldn't let these men escape. Letting a tiger return to the mountain or failing to eliminate the roots of a problem were both grave mistakes in a post-apocalyptic world. Without a word, Hiroshi raised his gun and fired. Bang! Another dull thud, and the man fleeing sprayed a mist of blood from his back, collapsing into a roadside ditch. Seeing 4 of their companions fall to Hiroshi, Yuna's face twisted with rage and desperation. Yes, she had felt fear when she saw the gun in Hiroshi's hand, and she had wanted to flee. But human fear has its limits. When pushed to the brink, that fear often transforms into anger and a desperate fight for survival. Today, it's either you or me. I'll risk my life to capture you. Yuna roared, and with a burst of terrifying power, she leapt towards Hiroshi like a hungry tiger pouncing on its prey. The remaining 3 men, realizing that their only chance of survival was to fight with everything they had, rushed at Hiroshi with a similar ferocity. The distance between them was already short, and now it was reduced to just 2 or 3 meters. Beyond 10 meters, guns are supreme. Within 3 meters, knives and guns are equally matched. Within half a meter, a gun is no more useful than a piece of scrap metal. Seeing this, Hiroshi sprang into action, kicking towards Yuna. I'll teach you to jump at me. Standing at 1.89 meters and burly, Yuna looked more imposing than Hiroshi. But when Hiroshi's kick landed on her chest, it was like being struck by lightning. Her face turned ashen, and she spat out a mouthful of blood. Her sturdy body flung 3 meters back. Smack! Hiroshi raised his gun to aim at Yuna, but one of the burly men on his right roared, brandishing a knife aimed at Hiroshi's abdomen. At this close range, a gun's effectiveness was severely limited, and a slight movement could cause a miss. Hiroshi quickly made a decision. He twisted his right index finger around the trigger guard, locking the safety in place, and gripped the gun barrel in his hand, turning the revolver into an iron hammer, which he then smashed down on the burly man's head. Though this sequence of actions seemed lengthy, it happened in a flash. Bang! Crack! The sound of bones breaking echoed, and the man cried out in pain. Bang! Hiroshi, expressionless, drove his knee into the man's face as he fell, knocking him out cold with blood spurting from his nostrils. The remaining 2 men rushed forward. Hiroshi shot down one, but the other managed to thrust his knife down. Hiroshi couldn't dodge in time, and as the knife came toward his chest, He prepared to deflect it with his arm. Suddenly, a figure leaped in front of him, intercepting the knife. It was Angus. Despite his earlier cowardice, cowering on the ground, Angus had found the courage, perhaps out of guilt or a desire for redemption, to shield Hiroshi. Squelch. A faint sound, like a wineskin being pierced and its contents spilling out, filled the air. The knife slid smoothly into Angus's chest, the tip emerging from his back, tearing through his shirt. Angus looked down, his body convulsing as if struck by lightning, his mouth opening and closing, producing guttural sounds. In extreme pain, a person cannot scream. Don't look. Hiroshi fired a shot, taking down the attacker, and quickly covered Angus's eyes, preventing him from seeing the knife lodged to the hilt in his chest. Scarlet blood flowed from Angus's chest. Hiroshi felt Angus's body go limp, as if all the bones had left him. Angus! Angus! Hiroshi's breathing quickened as he called out. He never expected Angus to shield him from the knife. Hiroshi! I'm sorry, so sorry. Angus's eyes were red, clutching Hiroshi's sleeve. I regretted it last night, but was too scared to tell you. I wanted to live. They took my dad. Blood flowed steadily, and Hiroshi felt Angus's weight increasing. Stop talking. I'll get you to a hospital. Hiroshi, I'm conflicted. I wanted to betray you for a better life, but I couldn't do it. Angus's eyes reddened, tears mixing with blood at the corners of his mouth. After the mutation, our house was robbed. My dad went as so many relatives, but none gave us food. Only you did, only you. Hiroshi's emotions were a turmoil. Angus had betrayed him, making him want to exact revenge. But now, with Angus shielding him, how should he react? Even Hiroshi didn't know. My dad was right. I'm a good-for-nothing. Can't be a good person, and too scared to be a bad one. You saved me, and now I'm giving my life back to you. Angus cried, blood trickling from his mouth. He pulled out a handful of colorful candies and $50 bills, placing them in Hiroshi's palm. These are the candies Juan gave me. So sweet. You're such good people, but I don't deserve your kindness. Hiroshi's hand trembled as he looked at the candies in his palm. I've atoned. Atoned? Angus's lifeless eyes stared at the sky, murmuring, seeming to smile and cry at once. Finally, his body grew cold and lifeless. Hiroshi placed Angus's body down, whispering after a moment, some mistakes can be made many times in a lifetime. Others, not even once. If you make them, you must accept the punishment. You've accepted your punishment. I forgive you. Then, Hiroshi stood, looking at Yuna, who was struggling to get up about 10 meters away. With a steely expression, he said through gritted teeth, Angus has paid. Now it's your turn and your boss's. If I don't skin you and pull out your tendons, I'm not Hiroshi. Chapter 23. The Man Behind the Scenes. Hiroshi's eyes darkened with malice, which quickly transformed into a deadly intent as he advanced toward Yuna. Yuna, now terrified, had discarded her knife and was staggering toward the car. Her mind was consumed by a single thought. Run. Run as fast as she could. Hiroshi closed the distance in a few strides, his eyes locked on Yuna's knees. With all his strength, he kicked down hard. Bang! With a dull thud, Yuna's right leg buckled, sending her sprawling backward. Brother, listen to me. Yuna pleaded frantically. Hiroshi didn't respond. Instead, he raised his leg and kicked Yuna in the head, sending her sliding half a meter forward, blood gushing from her nose and mouth. Clutching her head, Yuna screamed, Hiroshi, do you know what will happen if you kill me today? Hiroshi remained silent, his gaze fixed on Yuna's knee. He stomped down hard. Crack. With a sharp snap, Yuna's knee visibly caved in. She howled in pain, her eyes rolling back as she nearly passed out. Hiroshi smirked coldly, like a soccer player kicking a ball, and repeatedly kicked Yuna in the head. After several blows, Yuna was completely subdued, realizing Hiroshi intended to beat her to death. Brother, stop. Stop. I'm just following orders. What do you want? I'll give you money. Okay? Say something. Stop hitting me. Even if you're going to kill me, at least say it outright. Yuna was breaking down. Hiroshi's silent assault had shattered her mental defenses. She cried out, her vision blurring, every part of her body screaming in pain. Yuna was now more dead than alive. Hiroshi squatted down, grabbed Yuna by the collar, and asked in a low voice, "Answer my questions. Do you understand? If I cooperate, will you let me go?" Yuna whimpered. "Letting you go is impossible, but I can make your death easier." Hiroshi had no intention of sparing Yuna, making his intentions clear. Yuna laughed bitterly, having expected as much. Still, the pain was unbearable, and for the sake of a quicker end, she decided to cooperate. "Okay, ask away. Who's your boss?" Hiroshi asked gravely. Stardust Pharmaceutical Company had several shareholders, each with significant power. Hiroshi didn't know if this was the work of one person or a collective decision. "My boss is Jack," Yuna managed to say. Hiroshi frowned. "Jack, that bastard." The general manager of Stardust Company, the highest authority on paper. He was the one who orchestrated the price hikes and sidelined his predecessors. Upon hearing this name, Hiroshi asked, "Besides Jack, is anyone else involved?" Yuna was losing too much blood, her eyes unfocused, barely holding on. But in such a state, she couldn't fabricate lies. "This is all handled by Jack. He kept the information tightly sealed. Only us operatives knew, not even the other vice president." Yuna struggled to speak. "He's currently in a power struggle with another vice president and plans to use this to boost his standing with the head office, pushing the other vice president out of the South City branch." Hiroshi raised an eyebrow. "The head office?" So, Stardust Pharmaceutical, a massive enterprise, was merely a subsidiary of a larger group? How powerful must the parent company be? Slap. Slap. Seeing Yuna about to pass out, Hiroshi slapped her twice to keep her conscious. "Did Jack report this to the head office?"
No.
The slaps seemed to revive Yuna slightly. "The vice president he's against has connections in the head office. Jack's afraid news will leak to the vice president and ruin his plans." Hiroshi sighed in relief. For now, the information was contained with Jack. As long as it hadn't spread, resolving this issue wouldn't be too difficult. "Where does Jack live?" Hiroshi asked. He planned to target Jack, but it couldn't be at Stardust Company. Firstly, Stardust Company had strong security. Despite the current chaos, their accumulated wealth meant they still had formidable defenses. Attacking the company directly might fail and end up trapping him. Secondly, this operation had to be covert. Taking down Jack was meant to sever the information chain. If he caused a commotion and alerted others, it would defeat the purpose. Given these considerations, Hiroshi had to find a secluded location to deal with Jack. He lives at. As Jack's trusted aide, Yuna was familiar with his boss's habits. In her semi-conscious state, she divulged everything Hiroshi wanted to know. Hiroshi listened carefully, ensuring he memorized all the information. Finally, he looked at Yuna with a blank expression. "One last thing." Meanwhile, in the luxurious villa's living room, Jack was anxiously tapping his fingers on the table. He was waiting for news of Yuna's success. If this plan succeeded, his status within the group would soar, catapulting him into the top decision-making tier. He would transform from a mere fish to a dragon. Suddenly, his phone rang on the table. The caller ID read, "Yuna." Chapter 24, Inherited Style. "Hello? Is the mission complete?" Jack asked, trying to contain his excitement as he answered the phone. The voice on the other end was Yuna's, but it sounded weak. "What happened to you?" Jack immediately questioned. "Did the mission go smoothly?" "There were some complications on the way. I got injured, but we managed to capture the target." Yuna's voice was faint, as if she was gravely wounded. "You should leave your residence immediately and find a new meeting spot. We made some noise during the operation, and it seems Vice President Sally's people are onto us. I fear she might come after you next and cause more trouble." Vice President Sally was the one who had been in constant conflict with Jack. Hearing this, Jack cursed in frustration. "Damn it! How could you be so careless? That is a real pain." After a long silence, Yuna responded, "I'm sorry. Forget it. Take the target to Warehouse 78. I'll be there soon. Jack barked. Warehouse 78 was one of Jack's secret bases, remote and well hidden, so it rarely drew attention. Leaving his residence would also help him avoid Vice President Sally's surveillance. Yuna hung up abruptly. Jack was slightly annoyed. She's getting bold. Hanging up on me like that? Once I'm in the head office, the first thing I'll do is replace her. Grumbling to himself, Jack put on sunglasses and a mask, grabbed his car keys, and headed out. Kiko, Big Brother will be back soon. By the way, have you encountered any bad guys at home? Hiroshi asked, holding the steering wheel of the Mercedes SUV while speaking through the car's phone system. Yuna had already called and lured Jack out. Attacking him in his luxurious residential area was too risky, so Hiroshi decided to draw him out. The plan went smoothly. Jack didn't suspect a thing. To be cautious, Hiroshi had dragged the half-dead Yuna into the car, just in case Jack called again. As for the others, Hiroshi had already dealt with them. In these chaotic times, many people died daily. Even if they were left in the wild, it wouldn't cause much of a stir. Nevertheless, Hiroshi had dragged them all into a dry ditch, cut the fuel line of one of their vehicles, and set it on fire to erase any traces. Since the apocalypse, Hiroshi found that not only had his physical abilities improved, but he was also getting better at covering his tracks. As he had said before, he was becoming a demon. No bad guys, nope. Kiko's sweet voice came through the phone. I'm at home, and I haven't encountered anything. Big Brother asked if there were any bad guys at home. Those people didn't make it inside, so Kiko's answer was reasonable. Kiko didn't want Big Brother to know that she had said, I'm so annoyed, can't I just blow their heads off? Which is why those people ended up dead. Big Brother didn't like violent kids, especially those who casually blew people's heads off. But Big Brother also didn't like lying kids. Kiko was in a dilemma, but she quickly felt relieved. Lying? It was Big Brother who didn't ask clearly. Hiroshi raised an eyebrow as he listened to Kiko's words. Was Yuna lying to him? Were there really no two groups of people? Okay, Kiko, stay home and play. If you're hungry, eat some fruit. Big Brother will come back soon to cook for you, Hiroshi reminded her. Okay. Kiko agreed readily. Hanging up, Kiko's eyes darted to the mess outside the door. She had watched many TV shows, not just cartoons. She knew that if the bodies and the excavator remained outside, the police might come soon. I need to clean up the mess outside, Kiko said, holding her head in frustration. At that moment, she felt like a child who had accidentally killed the family's chickens and ducks, fearing her parents' scolding. She and Hiroshi shared a remarkably similar approach. Destroy the evidence. Only when the shelter is upgraded to a fortress level can I enable remote monitoring of the farm and maintain data functionality outside the farm. It seems I still need to accumulate more points, otherwise it's too inconvenient. After hanging up, Hiroshi sighed. Without real-time monitoring of the farm and losing data capabilities outside it, he felt uneasy. The first farm upgrade didn't require many points, just 8 million. At the current rate of accumulating points, he could save enough within a month or two. Calculating silently, it would be around the time of the second apocalypse. This gave Hiroshi some relief. The first apocalypse had caused such massive upheaval, making the world unstable. The second would likely be even worse. Only by preparing thoroughly could he face it confidently. The vehicle sped along. The Mercedes SUV's power was incomparable to the truck, and soon, Hiroshi arrived at Warehouse 78. From a distance, he saw a black Range Rover parked by the road. According to Yuna, that was Jack's car. He had arrived early. Clearly, he was very concerned about this matter, fearing any mishap, and had driven fast all the way. Hiroshi drove slowly past the Range Rover, not seeing anyone inside. Then, he looked ahead at the abandoned warehouse. Parking in an inconspicuous corner, Hiroshi got out. Dressed in a suit and sunglasses, he looked indistinguishable from Yuna's subordinates. The warehouse has 2 floors, with 8 rooms and a hall. I need to confirm his location first. Hiroshi thought for a moment, avoiding the surveillance cameras, and climbed in through a window at the back. Soon, he was in the second-floor hallway. The warehouse was empty, and Jack was likely in one of the rooms. Hiroshi paused, then dialed Jack's phone number. Music started playing in one of the second-floor rooms. A cold smile crept onto Hiroshi's face. He hung up and walked toward the room. Inside, Jack looked at the hung-up phone, puzzled, and called back. The phone rang loudly outside the door. Jack was stunned and looked up. The door opened, and Hiroshi stood there, waving his ringing phone with a smile. Surprised? Happy? Jack's face changed drastically when he saw Hiroshi, utterly shocked. I'm Hiroshi. Hiroshi stepped in, rolling up his sleeves and grinning menacingly. I'm here to skin you alive. Chapter 25. I'm different from you. Jack, an experienced businessman, instantly realized that Yuna and the others had likely failed the moment he saw Hiroshi. Quickly, he crafted a new narrative in his mind to handle the unexpected situation. I specifically instructed Yuna to invite Mr. Hiroshi with the most respect, but from your tone, it seems there's some misunderstanding between us. Jack smiled, maintaining his composure. Did my foolish subordinates offend you? Tell me, and I'll personally discipline them. There's no misunderstanding between us, Hiroshi replied, walking closer until he stood 3 feet away from Jack. He asked calmly, Where is Uncle Nan? Jack licked his lips, suddenly realizing he might still have the upper hand. He leisurely walked to the table, pulled a cigarette from the pack, and prepared to light it. His mind raced. Since Hiroshi was immediately asking about Uncle Nan's whereabouts, it indicated that the man held significant importance to him. Whether due to hatred or something else, this was a card he could play. Maybe he could negotiate with Hiroshi. I understand that being betrayed feels terrible. If you agree to cooperate with me and hand over the medicine, I'll give you Uncle Nan, and you can do whatever you want with him, Jack said, clicking the lighter. What do you say? Before he could light the cigarette, Hiroshi blew out the flame. Jack was taken aback, and then looked displeased as he clicked the lighter again. Hiroshi blew it out once more. Are you provoking me? Jack's brow furrowed with malice as he glared at Hiroshi. You can't afford the consequences of angering me. Is that so? Hiroshi's hands were in his pockets, his eyes showing a hint of amusement. I'd like to see what happens when I anger you. To be honest, in the current situation, the most powerful people are still us businessmen and tycoons. In South City, my Stardust company is the most powerful. I represent not just myself, but a formidable financial group. Jack's lips curled into a confident smile. People like you, who are thrust into the limelight by sheer luck, I've seen many in my years in business. Like some stubborn homeowners who refuse to move, hoping to sell their land for a fortune, or researchers clinging to their drug patents, dreaming of eating the whole cake themselves. These people are just like you. They think they can negotiate with Stardust Company, that they have the leverage to bargain. They ignore my offers of cooperation and provoke me relentlessly. Without exception, they all die miserably. Jack leaned closer to Hiroshi, smirking. Want to know what happened to them? The homeowner's son and daughter-in-law died in a car accident, both dead, leaving an old man with a pair of young twins. And the researcher's wife was kidnapped, gang-raped, and the video was posted online. She went mad, and the researcher lost his mind. Even their young daughter was bullied and expelled from school. Such a pity. Jack's face twisted into a sick smile as he patted Hiroshi's cheek. I heard you have a sister? I've seen her picture. Such a pretty girl. It'd be a shame if something like that happened to her. Jack's arrogance was boundless. He was confident that Hiroshi wouldn't dare touch him. After all, Hiroshi was just a penniless nobody, while he was the overlord of South City, the head of Stardust Company. Suddenly, Hiroshi burst into laughter. He flexed his fists, making his knuckles crack loudly. I'm different from you. I can't play such disgusting tricks. For those who anger me, I have only one rule, and that is to kill you. Hiroshi roared and punched Jack square in the face. The sharp sound of breaking bones echoed as Jack's nose and face caved in, visibly distorted. He fell back with a heavy thud. In an instant, blood splattered everywhere. Chapter 26. Fighting Terror with Terror. Hiroshi stomped on Jack's face, leaning down and growling, You think I don't dare touch you? You think your status is a shield? Jack, eyes wide with shock and fear, could not muster a word. I'm telling you, all your high and mighty statuses mean nothing to me. Hiroshi kicked Jack in the head. Maybe before the world changed, your threats meant something. But now, you're nothing to me. Worse than a dog. Hiroshi punched Jack in the head again. Stop hitting me. I take back what I said. Jack was genuinely terrified. He hadn't expected Hiroshi to be so decisive. Jack was the type who hid in his office, playing cunning games, completely different from Hiroshi. If Hiroshi let him go today, Jack might indeed make Hiroshi wish for death. But Hiroshi wasn't playing by any rules or engaging in a battle of wits. He was smashing all of Jack's schemes with brute force. If Jack was the cunning emperor, Hiroshi was the warrior who broke through with sheer strength. An emperor's wrath could cause blood to flow like a river. But the wrath of a mere warrior could spill the emperor's blood within 5 steps. If you hadn't spoken, I wouldn't have known about all the evil you've done. Hiroshi's eyes filled with murderous intent. He grabbed a hollow steel pipe nearby and gritted his teeth in anger. It's because of scum like you that this world has become so vile. I've been trying to survive carefully in this apocalypse, not wanting to hurt anyone. But reality keeps forcing me down this path. Since that's the case, I'll fight terror with terror, starting with you. Jack heard the thick, killing intent in Hiroshi's words, and his pupils shrank in fear. Hiroshi swung the steel pipe, smashing Jack's head. Jack's head tilted, and his pupils dilated instantly. 3 dull thuds crushed Jack's skull. The ambitious schemer, ready to embrace his new life, died at the hands of someone he considered a mere ant. 30 minutes later, a raging fire consumed Warehouse 78. By the time the firefighters arrived, the entire warehouse had been reduced to rubble. Among the ruins, they found 2 nearly incinerated bodies. After painstaking identification, they finally confirmed the identities of the 2 corpses. Jack, the general manager of Stardust Company. Yuna, head of Stardust Company's security department. Stardust Company was a leading enterprise in South City, a pillar of economic development, so news of this event spread quickly. Many were stunned upon hearing the news. In a certain office within Stardust Company, Vice President Sally was standing by the floor-to-ceiling window, on a call with the head office, when the door to her office was suddenly knocked on urgently. "Come in," Sally said, ending the call and turning around. "Vice President Sally, something important has happened. Jack is dead." The secretary burst in, breathless. Sally's stunning face showed a flash of surprise before turning serious. "Are you sure?" "It's true. The military police and hospital have confirmed his identity. They want us to go and claim the body." The secretary's face was pale. "What was the cause of death?" Sally asked urgently. "Was it murder or an accident?" "It's not clear yet. All we know is it's related to a fire," the secretary replied. "A warehouse on the outskirts caught fire, and firefighters found Jack's body in the ruins." "The outskirts?" Sally frowned. Her beautiful eyes filled with confusion. "Why would he be in such a place? The company has no business there." "That I don't know." The secretary shook her head. "This wasn't an accident." Sally's eyes suddenly shone with sharpness, like a hawk. Her red lips parted slightly. "Investigate immediately whether Jack had any recent contacts with strangers, and his call records. I want detailed information within 3 hours." In Stardust Company, the only person with more power than Jack was Sally. With Jack's death, this was an excellent opportunity for her. If she seized this chance, she could become the one holding great power. Thinking this, the secretary left to carry out her orders. After the secretary left, Sally took a deep breath, her eyes flickering as she murmured to herself, "This is definitely a murder, but who did it? Is the target only Jack, or Stardust Company? If it's the former, I'll open 2 bottles of red wine to celebrate tonight. But if it's the latter, then that person is my enemy." Sally stood there, her breathtakingly beautiful face showing extremely complex emotions. Chapter 27. The Head Office. In the bustling metropolis of Magic City, The capital of the Federation, a middle-aged man in a well-tailored suit stood atop a 38-story luxury office building. His face bore the marks of time and authority, his broad, powerful hands and piercing eyes exuding strength despite his age. Beneath his suit, his body still held explosive power. At this moment, he faced an elderly man, speaking in a deep voice. "Boss, there's been an incident in South City. Jack is dead. While there's no clear suspect, it's undoubtedly a homicide." The elderly man's slightly cloudy eyes flickered with a hint of surprise, which quickly vanished. Jack was always overly ambitious and ruthless. He made too many enemies. I've always said he was bound to get into trouble eventually. The middle-aged man remained silent. He was a good earner, a bit of a pity, but for us, losing a branch manager isn't a major loss. His death is no big deal. The old man waved dismissively. By the way, who's his deputy in the South City branch? It's Sally, the middle-aged man replied. Oh, Sally. She's capable enough, and her background is... The old man's voice trailed off, his tone becoming vague. He didn't elaborate. Let her take over Jack's position. I'll issue the notice immediately. The middle-aged man nodded. Tell Sally her first task as the new manager is to find and eliminate whoever killed Jack. The elder's eyes remained calm, but his words were chilling. If she fails, I'll remove her from the position. Understood. The old man stood up, looking out at the transformed world beyond the window, speaking solemnly. I've been in business for 50 years, never breaking into the highest echelons, not for lack of ability, but because the opportunity never arose. Now, with the world changed, we have the best chance. We must seize it and rise to the top. To this elder, the death of someone like Jack was insignificant. But as Jack bore his label, his death could not be ignored. Ignoring it would undermine his authority and make him unworthy of leadership. An hour later, a document was delivered to the general manager's office at Stardust Company in South City. With this document, a new era began for Stardust Company. As chaos spread through Stardust Company in South City, Hiroshi had finished his business and was driving back to his farm. After killing Jack, Hiroshi had found a personal phone on him and used its information to locate where Uncle Nan was being held. Jack, being a true scoundrel, hadn't fully trusted even his partners. On the same day Angus tried to sell out Hiroshi, Jack had secretly sent people to capture Uncle Nan and held him in an abandoned house in the suburbs. When Hiroshi arrived at the location, he found the guards had already fled. From the time of Jack's death, nearly 2 hours had passed. Hearing about their boss's sudden death, the henchmen, unsure if it was an accident or a company power struggle, panicked. Fearing for their own lives, they abandoned their post and the hostage, fleeing the scene. Hiroshi rescued an unconscious Uncle Nan from the abandoned house. Uncle Nan had been drugged and hadn't woken up yet. Parking the car at the farm gate, Hiroshi glanced at the still unconscious Uncle Nan in the back seat and sighed softly. Although the whole ordeal was resolved without major incident for him, it still felt heavy. Angus was undeniably guilty and paid for it, but Hiroshi couldn't shake the weight in his heart. It wasn't sympathy for Uncle Nan and his son, but a realization that from now on, he would only trust Kiko and no one else. The apocalypse hadn't changed his life drastically, but it had transformed him from a young man who believed in true feelings to a cold, decisive, mature man. Pain. Uncle Nan groaned softly. Hiroshi looked over, gently shaking Uncle Nan's shoulder. Uncle Nan, wake up. Soon, Uncle Nan opened his eyes groggily. Seeing Hiroshi, he rubbed his eyes hard to confirm he wasn't dreaming, stuttering. Hiroshi, is it really you? It's me, Hiroshi nodded. What happened? I remember being kidnapped and locked in a dark room. Uncle Nan held his head, trying to recall. Finally, he remembered everything, including Angus's plan to betray Hiroshi. Uncle Nan's body stiffened as if doused in cold water. Hiroshi, where is Angus? Uncle Nan's eyes were red as he asked. He had a premonition. Since Angus had acted against Hiroshi and Hiroshi was here safe and sound, Angus's fate was clear. He couldn't continue the thought and had to ask Hiroshi. Angus, Hiroshi hesitated, but decided to tell Uncle Nan everything. 5 minutes later, as Hiroshi finished, Uncle Nan was in tears. He made a mistake, but he did his best to make up for it, Hiroshi said, looking at Uncle Nan. I forgave him. Uncle Nan sobbed, but I can't forgive myself. I had the chance to stop all this before it happened, but out of greed and selfishness, I did nothing. This is my punishment. Hiroshi took a deep breath and said, what's done is done. It can't be changed. Yes, there's no medicine for regret. Uncle Nan looked at Hiroshi, his voice desolate. Hiroshi, what do you plan to do with me? Hiroshi was silent for a moment before speaking. I did think about killing you to end it all when I was at that house, but now I've changed my mind. A middle-aged man in the apocalypse, whose only motivation to live was his son, now had nothing. Wealth and power meant nothing to him anymore. His heart was dead, and a man with a dead heart wouldn't betray others. Hiroshi, I know you're kind-hearted. Uncle Nan's eyes were red as he smiled sadly. Don't worry, I won't make things difficult for you. At that moment, Kiko stood on the second-floor balcony, watching the farm gate, coloring on a white paper with her watercolor pens. As she colored, she said, the big brother is still the cleanest blue, and Uncle Nan has turned dead gray, just like his son was on the bed. Chapter 28. I will always be with you, even if it means falling into hell. Uncle Nan had left. Before leaving, he only said one thing. I need to retrieve my son's body. No matter what wrongs he committed, he was still my son. I can't let his body be left out in the wild. Hiroshi didn't kill him to silence him, but Uncle Nan already had a death wish. Even if he left here, he would likely become a soulless walking corpse. Hiroshi sighed. In this post-apocalyptic world, such matters were beyond his control, and he didn't want to deal with them further. Watching Uncle Nan's silhouette disappear into the horizon, Hiroshi pushed open the farm gate and walked inside. Suddenly, he noticed some tracks from large machinery near the farm entrance. Though they had been somewhat covered, upon closer inspection, the traces were still visible. He rubbed his chin and frowned. He remembered these tracks weren't there when he left in the morning. Could it be that what Eunice said about someone attacking the farm was true? But why did Kiko say she didn't see anything? Forget it, he thought. He could check the surveillance to find out. Driving the truck into the farm, Hiroshi took off his blood-stained jacket and tossed it into a nearby fire pit to burn. Once he had done this, his dog, Benji, came running out, wagging its tail. Suddenly, Benji sniffed Hiroshi and recoiled in fear. Hiroshi was taken aback. He hadn't expected Benji's senses to be so sharp. Perhaps it was sensing the lingering killing intent on him, making it afraid to get close. Big brother. At that moment, a drawn-out voice called out. Kiko appeared, rushing toward Hiroshi and throwing herself into his arms. Big brother, you're finally back. I was starving. As if to prove her point, her stomach let out a growling sound. Hiroshi smiled, the gloom lifting from his face. He patted Kiko's head. I'm sorry I'm late and made you go hungry. I want braised pork, Kiko said, her eyes brightening as she spread her arms wide. A big bowl of it. Okay. Hiroshi patted her head again. I'll make it for you right away. In the kitchen, Hiroshi tied on an apron and poured cooking wine over large pieces of pork belly in the pot. After simmering it for a while, he let the sauce reduce before taking it off the heat. Meanwhile, the rice had also finished steaming. Hiroshi scooped half a bowl of rice into Kiko's small bowl, added some braised pork sauce, and placed it in front of her. You can start now. It smells so good. Kiko sniffed the air, then picked up her small chopsticks and began devouring her meal like a little whirlwind. To Kiko, the enemy was the heaping plate of braised pork and the side dish of stir-fried baby bok choy. Hiroshi always believed in a balanced diet, pairing meat with vegetables. While Kiko ate heartily, Hiroshi checked the surveillance footage. The events at the farm gate from that morning played out in his mind. Watching the footage, Hiroshi's expression gradually turned to one of surprise. Big brother, why aren't you eating? Kiko asked, glancing at him as she shoveled rice into her mouth. Hiroshi was silent for a moment before asking, Kiko, did nothing really happen at the farm this morning?
No.
Kiko replied, a bit sheepishly. Kiko, big brother doesn't like it when kids lie. Hiroshi crouched down, looking seriously into her eyes. Tell the truth. Did something happen? Nothing happened. Kiko pouted, pushing her bowl aside. Then what about the tracks at the farm gate? Hiroshi asked softly. Someone attacked the farm, and after being fought off, you cleaned up the mess so I wouldn't see it, right? Kiko's head drooped, looking both dejected and as if her lie had been exposed. Kiko, why did you lie? Hiroshi asked. He took her education seriously and believed in being honest with each other. He couldn't understand why she would hide something like this from him. Kiko hadn't done anything wrong. I didn't lie. Kiko pouted stubbornly. I saw everything. Hiroshi's voice grew cold, his patience wearing thin. Why are you still arguing? Tears welled up in Kiko's eyes. Though Hiroshi treated her well, as her elder brother, he still disciplined her when she made mistakes. Lying was a bad habit, especially lying to family. Kiko didn't want to lie. Kiko just didn't want Big Brother to hate me. Kiko cried. Big Brother doesn't like violent kids, and I made a mistake. So I wanted to hide it. I was afraid Big Brother wouldn't want me anymore. Hiroshi's body stiffened at her words. He suddenly remembered a time when Kiko had fought with other kids in kindergarten, scratching another child's face. He had apologized to the other parents and paid for the damages. For a month afterward, his attitude towards Kiko had been bad, but it was just because he was stressed about the farm's poor harvest, not because of Kiko's fight. Now he realized Kiko had misunderstood. She had been trying to avoid making him angry again, afraid of upsetting him. Seeing Kiko in tears, Hiroshi felt a pang in his heart. He crouched down and hugged her gently, speaking softly. How could I ever not want you? You are the most important person to me. Even if the whole world abandons you, I won't. No matter if you're sweet and gentle or fierce and violent, you're still my favorite. Because you're my only family. Hiroshi took a deep breath. So, no matter what mistakes you make, I'll always stand by your side. Kiko was stunned. She had never seen Hiroshi so emotional. But what if one day I do something really bad? Will you still stay with me? Kiko asked timidly. Hiroshi smiled, thinking of Uncle Nan and Angus. Family is like that. Even if someone commits an unforgivable crime, in their heart, they remain the closest person. So, Hiroshi replied earnestly, I will always be with you, even if it means falling into hell. Chapter 29. The Strongest Support, Eye of Good and Evil. At this moment, Kiko perhaps still didn't fully grasp the weight of Hiroshi's promise, but what she clearly understood now was that she no longer needed to hide anything from brother. So, she recounted everything she had encountered during the time Hiroshi was away from the farm. Hiroshi's eyes widened as he listened. He heard some incredible things. You mean, you saw those bad people emitting a red light? Hiroshi felt a dryness in his throat, realizing that Kiko seemed to have undergone changes recently that even he wasn't aware of. Yes, Kiko nodded decisively. Kiko doesn't like that kind of light. It makes me nervous. Hiroshi rubbed his chin, his mind racing. Besides those people, did anyone else emit light? He squatted down and asked softly, eager for the answer. Yes. Kiko nodded firmly. Big Brother emits a relaxing blue light, and Benji emits a friendly green one. Oh, and when Uncle Nan left just now, he had a dull gray light, very oppressive, just like when we saw his big brother lying in bed the night before last. Hiroshi couldn't help but swallow hard at her words. It seemed Kiko wasn't lying at all. She seemed to have awakened some kind of ability. Hiroshi suddenly felt ashamed. Starting a few days ago, Kiko would occasionally mutter to herself things like, Kiko is pink, Big Brother is blue. But Hiroshi always thought she was too engrossed in watching cartoons, so he never asked further. Now it seemed that if he had shown a little more concern for Kiko, he might have known earlier. Kiko, besides seeing different lights on people, did you notice anything else around them? Hiroshi pursued. Like words? Or some data? Kiko shook her head. Nope. Hiroshi stood up and, based on what Kiko said, deduced that her abilities seemed to have appeared after the arrival of the Destruction Era. Could it be that the Destruction Era not only destroyed the world, but also bestowed miraculous powers upon some lucky individuals? Hiroshi opened a search engine to see if similar incidents had occurred worldwide. But after browsing through numerous posts, most were just nonsense from masters before the destruction era, and there was nothing comparable to what Kiko was experiencing. After a moment of silence, he closed the search engine. No explanations, just inexplicable lights. What exactly is the ability of this power? Hiroshi was worried. He had a pair of eyes to show details of everything, but they couldn't reveal the nature of Kiko's ability. It seemed he could only speculate about its effects. Let me sort this out, Hiroshi decided. He sat down and softly asked Kiko about the different people she had encountered recently, the colors of light they emitted, and their relationships with Kiko. Kiko propped up her little head and slowly recalled. Half an hour later, the sheet of paper in front of Hiroshi was filled with a list of people Kiko had encountered recently, the colors of light they emitted, their relationships with Kiko, and the distribution of light colors. First was himself. Hiroshi, Kiko's closest relative, emitted a blue light that was said to be very relaxing. Next was the night before last when he saw Angus. At that time, lying on the sickbed, he was a dull gray, very oppressive. But this morning, Angus's light turned blood red, making Kiko very uncomfortable. As for Uncle Nan, the faint light he emitted when he was at his house was a light green. But when he left just now, it turned dull gray. As for the people Kiko saw in front of the South City department store, the light they emitted was all dull gray. Hiroshi fell silent for a moment and wrote on the paper, "Changes in light may indicate whether they harbor ill intentions towards Kiko." Hiroshi thought about it, and finally confirmed that his speculation was correct. The light Kiko saw indeed represented whether the other person had ill intentions towards her. This is simply a human reconnaissance device. Hiroshi couldn't help but laugh. This is amazing. In the end of days, what was most terrifying? It wasn't the disaster itself, but human hearts. He could achieve everything through items sold in the store, but he couldn't see through people's hearts. And now, Kiko had this ability. It completely made up for his only shortcoming and made everything perfect. Among all the reconnaissance devices I've seen, I'd call you the strongest. Hiroshi patted Kiko's little head. With this ability, I acknowledge you. Kiko blinked her big eyes. She didn't quite understand the Naruto reference, as she was always immersed in Paw Patrol, but hearing Hiroshi's words made her excited. Can Kiko help from now on? She asked seriously. Of course, Hiroshi whispered. In the future, if you see someone emitting a red light, you must tell Big Brother. Okay. Kiko nodded earnestly. Red isn't good. It makes Kiko very nervous. I'll tell Big Brother to scare them away. Hiroshi squatted down, contemplating something. My data-ized ability is called True Eyes, Hiroshi said as he placed his hand on Kiko's head, smiling indulgently. Your ability, let's call it the Eye of Good and Evil. From now on, you're my strongest support. Chapter 30. Constructing the Fish Pond. June 18th. Time rushed by, marking the 10th day since the dawn of the destruction era, and the 3rd day since Jack's death. During these 3 days, neither military nor police showed up at Hiroshi's doorstep to take him away. There were no super assassins creeping into the farm under cover of darkness. Everything appeared calm and serene. Yet beneath this tranquility, Hiroshi remained vigilant. He knew well that figures like Jack and Alex were not ordinary. Jack held a prominent position at Stardust Corporation, a truly influential figure. With Jack's death, certain individuals would undoubtedly investigate. Beneath this deceptive calm, who knew what storm might be brewing? Jack's death deeply unsettled Hiroshi. In this post-apocalyptic world, old orders were crumbling. Though he currently lacked worries about food or warmth, his power was still vastly inferior compared to some major tycoons. Leaving aside the mysterious parent company behind Jack, even Stardust Pharmaceutical alone was an entity he couldn't currently contend with. If it weren't for internal conflicts within Stardust Corporation, if Jack hadn't been cautious about mobilizing company resources, Hiroshi's farm might already have been overrun. Following this, Hiroshi spared no expense, spending 50,000 points to activate remote control over the farm. Jack's minions, who had prepared to attack the farm while Hiroshi was away, had raised his awareness to the inadequacies of his control. His system's capabilities were like a mobile phone out of service once he left the farm, leaving him blind to current events there. If a guardian warrior made a critical mistake and he remained oblivious, wouldn't he regret it for a lifetime? After activating remote control over the farm, even if Hiroshi was outside the farm, he could control everything inside, which was very convenient. Over these 3 days, Hiroshi learned from online forums that the external mutations were becoming more severe. The situation was becoming increasingly chaotic. Illegal elements had begun openly selling prohibited items on the internet, such as stimulants, firearms like shotguns, and hunting rifles. Hiroshi had anticipated this. In the apocalypse, hidden dangers were far too numerous. It was understandable for people to buy weapons to protect themselves. But from this, it could also be seen that the collapse of order was no longer just a matter of time. Without solving the shortage of food, even if the authorities tried their best to control criminal activities, it would be futile. Initially, when the mutations first occurred, Hiroshi had imagined that perhaps the upper echelons could handle this crisis, that humanity could confront natural disasters and return to its former civilization. But now, at this moment, Hiroshi had completely abandoned such fantasies. He no longer placed hope in anyone, but focused solely on enhancing his own strength. He wanted to create a completely safe environment where Kiko could grow up without any worries or dangers, happily. He wanted to make himself powerful enough so that even if the Earth was destroyed and the human race extinguished, he could still protect Kiko and create a new civilization in the ruins. With this thought in mind, he felt he should accelerate the development of the farm, earn more points, and bring out all the items from the store. Only then could he sleep soundly. Noon. Hiroshi cooked spinach lean meat porridge, paired with 2 large bowls of sauced beef and 4 spicy lamb hooves. It had been 10 days since the destruction era began, and the food shortage had become more severe. Many places had seen fatalities due to food riots. In South City alone, nearly 80% of households now ate only 2 meals a day. Even then, it was mostly plain noodles and clear soup with a sprinkle of salt as seasoning. Vegetables and meat had become rare commodities, with prices skyrocketing nearly 100-fold, and yet they were still hard to come by. The internet had once again stirred up waves because of this. Tick user. I hope we, the Federation, can successfully tide over this crisis. May heaven bless our nation. Let's unite. Disasters will eventually pass. I can hold on. The Federation. Come on. Talk user. On the 4th day of food shortage, I'm still alive. Brothers, give me some attention. If subscriptions reach 10,000, I'll livestream myself eating mutant wild-boar meat. Let's go, brothers. Tube user. Regarding the food shortage situation, I can't say too much. There are too many acquaintances in the circle. I can only say those who understand. If you don't, even if I explain, you still won't understand. Facelook user. Old man observed the celestial phenomena last night and calculated it. There must be someone deliberately manipulating behind this famine. Countless netizens spoke out on various social apps, all with one central theme: lack of grain, rice, and meat. Hungry. Haven't eaten fruits and vegetables for several days, craving them. It wasn't just the outside world. Even the stocks of beef and lamb in Hiroshi's farm freezer had run dry. In these 10 days, perhaps due to the radiation-resistant vegetables altering their bodies, Hiroshi and Kiko's appetites had become insatiable. Each of them needed at least 5 kilograms of meat per meal, followed by digestive fruits and desserts. Their appetites were truly shocking. But matching this, all their physical stats had notably improved. Hiroshi's attribute points had reached a comprehensive 14, while Kiko, though not growing as much, had also gained 2 points in strength and speed. Hiroshi had once experimented and found that with his current strength, he could effortlessly lift and swing a 30-kilogram dumbbell with one hand. Don't think this was nothing special. In fact, Hiroshi's single-arm strength now exceeded 300 kilograms, surpassing even the world's top strongmen. Moreover, most importantly, his speed and reaction times had greatly improved. Nowadays, if he participated in sports competitions, he could easily take home the grand prize. However, recently, he was troubled because his increased strength had already broken many things at home, such as some glass cups and benches, with just a gentle touch. Having eaten their fill, Hiroshi and Kiko swiftly devoured their lunch. After the meal, they patted their slightly swollen bellies contentedly and sighed with satisfaction. In today's environment, being able to eat a full meal was a kind of happiness. "Kiko, tell me what you want for dinner, and I'll prepare in advance," Hiroshi asked softly, looking at Kiko. Kiko blinked and thought for a moment before saying, "Big brother, we haven't had fish in a long time." Kiko's words immediately reminded Hiroshi. At the northernmost part of the farm, there was an empty space. It didn't belong to the planting or livestock areas and was originally a low-lying weed-infested land. Now, perhaps he could dig it up and establish a fish pond there. Fish meat was tender, flavorful, and rich in various nutrients, making it an essential ingredient on the dining table. Hiroshi suddenly became excited. "Let's do it." After lunch, Hiroshi sent the intelligent work robot to collect the batch of grain that had just matured yesterday, and he himself carried a hoe to the barren land at the northernmost part of the farm. "You've recovered 800 kilograms of radiation-resistant rice, earning 8,000 points. You've recovered 700 kilograms of radiation-resistant." Listening to the pleasant notification tones from the system, Hiroshi felt the excitement of receiving a $10,000 on Alipay. These points were more precious than money. Through these days of diligent work, he had accumulated around 830,000 points in the store. His gaze shifted to the livestock category. Livestock. Fish. Edible type. Level 1 fish larva. 10 for 50 points. Level 2 fish larva. 10 for 500 points. Level 3 fish larva. 10 for 5,000 points. Level 4 fish larva. 10 for 500,000 points. Level 5 swordfish larva. 10 for 5 million points. Glancing roughly, Hiroshi found that the grades of livestock were similar to those of crops, ranging from low to high across 5 levels. The prices for system retrieval were also the same. Next to the edible type, there was an option for ornamental type, featuring fish like tropical and dragonfish used for viewing. Hiroshi currently didn't want to spend his precious points on these frivolous things, so he directly closed the ornamental type option and looked at the edible type. There were many classifications under the edible type, from common carp, perch, catfish, and others to rare species like swordfish. Though fish varied within the same level, their purchase prices were entirely the same. "This is quite fair," Hiroshi sighed. Before the mutations, swordfish could be considered a luxury ingredient, but now it seemed he could afford it. And most importantly, regardless of their natural habitats, as long as the water quality is right, deep water fish and tropical fish can both live in the same fish pond. Hiroshi waved the hoe in his hand, bolstering his own spirits, and started digging. Hiroshi didn't intend to dig out a fish pond that covered roughly 1,000 square meters with just a small hoe. That would be a fool's errand. However, he was someone who valued ritual, so even though he would bring an excavator later, he wanted to personally dig the first spade of soil for the fish pond. This was self-cultivation as a farm owner.